Barbara, I hope that answers the question. I think that
forgot the
answers
recording
my
somehow.
perspective.
I pushed it, but sorry.
I hope that answers my take on this. But I mean, I've just got the hard copy, and I'm going through it, and I'm taking copious notes. So I'll give a response to John and Adam later as I finish.
Wonderful. So since I forgot to push the recording, I need John and Adam, if you have the time to stay afterwards and summarize the book again. I'm so sorry. That never happened to me yet. And I kind of pushed it, but I don't know what happened. So, what's a system, Jamie?
A system's a human construct. It's something that's made up. It doesn't really exist. So the question for the book is really important. Do systems exist? They do, because human beings create them in their own heads. But your system, when you look at an organization or an environment, is not the same as my system when I look at it, and that everyone has their own perspectives on these things. I think from a practical point of view, when we're building mental models of systems, boundaries are really important, because that's how we define systems as individuals and as human beings. From my perspective, doing program delivery and making changes in organizations, I think the key thing is that so much of the way people are trained to deliver change within an organization is so reductionist. And the reason we see so much failure and change in organizations is the lack of systems thinking, the lack of applying the holistic view and the other worldviews of people involved in change to enable a change that is accommodated by all parties, as opposed to being directed from above, which we often see as failure. Is one of the reasons for failure of change in organizations. So that's the way I approach systems with professionally. I've read a lot of the academic stuff. Just putting my hand up, I completed my master's degree in systems thinking and practice with the Open University this year. I was awarded my MSc. My dissertation.
Congratulations. And I'm really grateful for the good to understand definition of system you're giving, so that we can really understand it. Maybe, Roger, what isn't a system that people are normally understanding as a system? Because there's a big conundrum that I'm seeing, and I think it's important to also talk about that.
Thank you, Barbara. That's some question which I'll take the politician's privilege and not answer it, because it'll take me to a while to get to that. But let me try and throw some things into the talk. So obviously we all think it's a great book. So otherwise we wouldn't be here. So well done, Adam. Well done, John. And I use metaphors and examples from my own life. So the first example I'll use is the idea of one hand clapping. So, for example, Julia was talking about the thing against reductionism. And the thing against reductionism is actually a big mistake. Reductionism is part and parcel of systems thinking as much as holism is. So the way I think about this, and it's a bit of an old guy's sort of comment, is if you remember the old Victorian shops, you would walk into where the door was in an old Victorian shop, and there was a mirror on either side of the little pathway that you went in. And if you looked in the mirror to the left, you saw a picture of yourself in the right, which also saw a picture of yourself in the left, which also saw a picture. And these things went on to infinity. And that's what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do in the complexity of life is to look at things from both sides. But as well as that, which is what most people think of systems, you're doing that in depth, which is Koestler's idea of a holon. which is actually very not discussed by many people, but it goes into what Alan was saying. So the thing about it, and unfortunately we can't do this easily because our webcams are now in the screen. But in the old days, that the webcam was on at the end of a wire, you could put the webcam to look at your screen, and if you got the angle right, you had this amazing 3D view that went to infinity of what you're saying. And I hope that's what the book is going to do. What the book is going to do is to talk through all this stuff, which lots of people write about, but have the camera at the right angle so you can see all the nuances and you can see how it bounces off each other. And you can see as soon as you say that something's X, it's actually not X. And we have talked a lot about boundaries and stuff. So one of the curses that we have in thinking is instant classification. Now, we learnt instant classification from the days that we lived in the savannah, and we had to decide whether those leaves that were moving were actually a saber-toothed tiger or were just leaves moving. And the people that survived were the ones that could classify very quickly and act accordingly. So that's what we need to get away from. That's what reflections all around. And to bring it up, I thought Charles's talk was absolutely great, and I wrote down a few bits which won't be on the video because you weren't recording then, but just let me repeat what I wrote down. He was talking about 15 authorities in London. There were 10 potential characteristics on EDI, and there were 7 something or others. I'm not quite sure what there was, but this yielded a 500-page report and 150 recommendations. And that, to my mind, and I'm sorry about this, Charles, because I used to work in the public sector and no longer do, is the art form that people make of systems in the public sector. So in the public sector, you actually say something, and then you get somebody representing this group, what about X? And somebody representing that group, what about Y? And what they're doing is they're all peddling their own agendas, and they sort of throw it in the mix. So it becomes an unsolvable problem. So one of the things that we have to be very careful about with the modern incarnation of systems thinking is that postmodern systems thinking isn't about my truth. As Chetland makes very clear, it's about having a dialogue about it. And the dialogue is where you arbitrate and you say, I'll give you this for I'll give you that. But too many people just use systems thinking as my truth. So I don't like the answer you've got. I don't like austerity in the UK. My truth is you ought to give more money to people from Lancashire with freckles. Yeah. And the reason why is I've done some systems thinking on that. Now, that's the problem. So good luck to John and Adam. It is the beginning of a big conversation. And if you have time, go to a nice Victorian shopping arcade that still has these old shops and just stand around and look at the reflections and get the angle right, because that's what systems thinking is all about. So sorry I didn't answer your question.
Yeah, I meant process or not systems. It's often getting confounded because it got defined in a wrong way, and a lot of things that I read as system thinking is actually talking about process, and I think it's important to distinguish those two. So thank you so much, Roger. Can system thinking be of practical value, John?
Well, that is the ultimate test of everything. And yeah, I mean, there's so many things that people have been saying that I want to react to. You know, the first thing is, I think it's useless to go in to an organization and tell them that they need more systems thinking, because that doesn't mean anything. Or even to say you need to think holistically about this problem, because that's it. There has so many different meanings that it ends up being meaningless. You know what I think what we should be saying is you need to think a little deeper about this problem, or you need to think about this problem in more productive ways. But to say that they need systems thinking is I think it's meaningless. And again, to me, in terms of the question you just asked, I mean, the only test. See, the problem is academics, the test is logic, or the test is consistency or coherence of the ideas. But the ultimate test is correspondence. Does what I think will the organization work? Will it achieve the goals, or will it satisfy the objectives that I intend when I make a change? That's the only test of your idea. That's the only natural test of any idea is, does it make things better or does it make things worse? And if things that you think are going to make things better actually make things worse, then your hypothesis and your model is wrong.
Thank you so much, John. Ross.
Yeah, just a bit of an elaboration on that point from John, actually. So I think one of the key things really missing in any sort of change is autonomy. We'll have self-determination theory states you need autonomy, relatedness, and competence to be fully motivated to do anything. And I think part of the issue with any sort of systems thinking, any sort of implementation of a new process, we very much believe our way is the right way. So we're not trying to engage other people with what do you believe in this? We're trying to impose something onto them. And that's where I think, there's so many other aspects here that need to be considered. I think for me, I'm very much a big user, I'm sure most people are here, of AI. I very much, for me, it helps translate my thoughts into a different perspective, and that's something that I'm working on at the moment, is a way to sort of translate cultural differences, trying to kind of, open up those dialogues with other people. And I think that's one of the very interesting parts. I mentioned before about binary thinking. The world is split between good, evil, Coke, Pepsi, Apple, or Samsung, and I think those siloed things just keep us in a very much a black and white thinking. But, systems thinking, as much as it can be black and white, if you're looking at it from an expansive, holistic perspective, then it is something where you can create a system that is all encompassing, and you can create systems that do very much, encounter different opinions and things like that. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective, but I think for me, autonomy is one of the big key takeaways here. When we're trying to impose a system on somebody else, it's just not generally going to work. So it's how do we consider other people in our views and consider the fact that people have different opinions as well.
And maybe system thinking is just about you understanding the world differently. For example, you can ask yourself the question, how does the world look from the perspective of a Coke? Adam, please.
So a lot of my framing is in business. I do business consulting, and what I've learned is change management is the failure to understand systems, the fact it even exists, the fact that they say people are resistant to change, the fact that people change all the time. We absorb variety daily. The reason that we can't absorb variety as soon as we turn up to work is because you need a plan, you need a return on investment, you need a project manager, you need change management, you need all these things. And every time anything tries to adapt to its environment, it can't, because it's been locked in process and frozen in place. Getting change in business is not about talking about change. It's about ensuring that the conversations that should be happening are happening between two people who have empathy for each other. One of the biggest, most restrictive and horrific things that's happened in business is people get promoted on the level of their narcissism. HR love narcissistic people. They're confident and they're go-getters, and they can crush people underfoot without worrying about it, and they can go home and have their tea. And what we're seeing is the consequences of business is, why are these people not engaged anymore? What's going on? How come productivity is so low? It's you. We promoted you to be our leader because of your level of narcissism. And guess what? Everybody hates you. I worked for an organization that actively worked against the organization because, as they used to say, when I sell something, the CEO gets a new coat of paint on their yacht. Why should I give a crap about that? So let's not bother selling anything. We don't care if the customer walks away. We just don't care. And these are massive 500,000 people organizations who think this way. So we've turned this thing into a machine of productivity and efficiency. Efficiency is another word, right? People talk about efficiency. Efficiency has no definition of value. So do things faster for less, assuming that the thing you're doing is the thing that should be done. But nobody actually asks whether or not that thing should be done.
Thank you so much, Adam. I just saw Onyx's hand on the chest, and I'm so happy to see you. I didn't even I've researched you, but I searched for the old name, so I'm really glad to see you. What did you want to say?
Yes, oh gosh, it's very emotional for me actually. Yes, I've come to the same conclusion, Adam, that it's the human suffering in conditions that are unnatural. And we want to go in and say, hey, just change this up or do this or follow this system or follow this process when there's a soul inside crying out for justice. And I've been thinking a lot about this problem of narcissism and the wreckage that behavior causes. And I don't have a solution. But yeah, it pains me to hear that that's your experience and that's what you're seeing. It's what I already knew, but I wasn't sure because I'm not working with big businesses like that. So
I'm working
I'm
on
really
a
glad to be here. Thank you.
So
I'm working on a
maybe
solution.
narcissism is against system thinking, or would even make it small and laugh about it, but I can't see narcissistic people being able to do system thinking because they have just their own perspective. So it's kind of exclusive. John, what did you want to say?
I'm gonna go for brevity and my usual gnomic wisdom, which is if the music is the space between notes, then either creativity or human relationship, or indeed, as Roger said in response to John's earlier point, right? It's got to be approached with humility, and it's an invitation to dialogue. Like, what else? What else is there? But yeah, if music is a space between notes, then I think relationship and useful systems thinking, to go back to John's point about did it make it better? Did it make it worse? Useful system thinking is in the space between knowns.
So this is wonderful. That sounds really great. Thank you so much.
And he's out.
Say it, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Learned a lot of things here today. What I want to say is we have the forest. Humans have lived in the forest. If you live in the forest, you don't need computer science to survive. You are a system thinker despite you, because you will learn to survive. How do you survive in a forest? How do you live within the forest? We have gone through this. We humans, we were systems thinkers, but due to the modern technologization and technologism, we have lost our systems thinking ways and natural ways of doing it. I'd like to mention Peter Senge. He has proved numerous times that even children, 9-year-old, if they are let to speak up and be what they are, they will be system thinkers. So on the other side of things, when politics and economics as one late the Nobel Prize guys have done recently, politics and economics, they become exclusivists. They are against systems thinking and against systems. And then what are you going to fix? You may try to fix the manager, but if the manager is already subdued by politics at a higher level that he cannot even see, then we don't have solutions. We're just running into walls of human technologism having gone amok. What else? That's what I wanted to say. But a great initiative by you and Adam and all to really write a book and to really benefit us. I'm gonna look at the book, and I hope you're gonna have further conversations in the future about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Said. James and Rose, I have another question. I don't know whether it's nice to just put you on spot, but I do it anyway. How can we understand boundaries of a system that doesn't exist?
That's a struggle of a question. In ISSS, the General Systems Theory Group, Bertalanffy's group, it's been for 75, 80 years. It's still an ongoing debate, which is really sad, but that's the state of the art. In my own rendition of it, nothing exists in isolation. We're all codependent upon each other in intricate, subtle ways, and yet we have boundaries of differences which make us distinct or make anything distinct that where the relationships are set up. And somehow there's a natural, that's just the nature of the structure of the architecture of being. So to debate taxonomy points or thing points, different distinctions, is really, really a difficult challenge to do. I tend to think in terms of mostly like Kenneth Boulding did in deep general theories aspects of it. And yet I know it's important to have particulars. I think when I wrote in the chat was a word that notion I came up with years ago is between is a thing. It's a relationship, it's an entity, but it doesn't exist without other things. It's not an independent entity. So you can't draw a boundary there. It's a presence. So to have these kind of discussions may satisfy some identity hunt that we're on or for the world, or just it's a natural instinct to be able to say, oh, there's a problem there's a good thing here, and to know a distinction between them to be able to make decisions in the world and then survive. So there's a functionality that's involved here with that. I tend to think that there's hope in trying to understand in pinning down processes and relationships in a much better way rather than thingness, because the world is not one. We tend to even think about things. I know the language is getting very cumbersome and convoluted on itself, and I apologize about that. But it's existence is the real plurality of things. There are many interactions and relationships happening simultaneously, which are a combination of cooperation and competition. A simple example is all right, if the insurance companies, all right, they say that, okay, we're going to take a small amount of money from each person, they're going to contribute, and in case a calamity happens, it's not going to cost them, their entire life will not go to pieces. We'll share the cost across a lot of people. It's a very noble thing. It's helpful for society. It's a safety net. But then the companies get so big that they have an identity. They are a system. And so they're sharing this pool of money, but does the money supposed to go for the benefit of the insured? Or is it supposed to go for the maintenance and sustenance of the company? And at some point, the managers and owners of the company say, well, it's okay, we have to protect the company, and to hell with the other people, with the people that we promised to protect. And that's sort of an extreme, but in more subtle ways, that's a constant balance between so many things that we struggle to cope with, and yet be ethical along the way, be noble along the way, be moral along the way, and it gets to be a challenge in making choices. I don't have a specific answer. I can only give you this is more like a thematic sensibility that I'm trying to share with you.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much, James. So, Ken, what's your take on the whole discussion, and if you've read the book, about the book?
Well, first of all, I've been a systems scientist for about 25 years. And what that entails is I do computation, I do modeling, visualization, simulation. I've been a member of INCOSE, an active member of INCOSE for a long time. I've been active in the International Society of Systems Science for a long time. I've taught there. I appreciate the diversity of opinions, but I will say that all of the topics, all the questions and answers that we've come up with today it's just a reflection of a common pattern that's been happening over the past 25 years, as long as I've been involved in it. I view systems as an abstract pattern that gets realized. People use the term existence. You can exist at different levels of abstraction down to concrete. We don't know which one of those is real. We can find out, kind of. But we look at existence as something that you can refer to. People talk about objective. The only thing about an objective existence is you can point to it and say, this. You can point to this rock, this tree, this mental notion, this mathematical concept, this Platonic ideal, this abstract concept. And there's a whole level of abstractions of which systems are just an abstract reference to a pattern. I think one of the things people like to define things, I've given up on definitions. I use characterizations. My characterization is my characterization. It doesn't matter whether it's your characterization. I appreciate the diversity of the opinions. So therefore, I tend to listen more now and talk less. That hasn't always been the case.
Thank you so much. And we come back to what John said. I think it was before the recording was taken, about humility. I find this is a very important part of system thinking.
Absolutely.
So I'm making the round so that everybody has had the opportunity to say something. Maybe we take 10, 15 more minutes, and then I will ask John and Adam to kind of summarize the book. So we have that also on the recording, and you're welcome to stay. Rowan, please.
Oh, sorry. I was supposed to pay attention.
You can just say something. I give you up to 2 minutes.
No, I haven't read the book yet, but it's been very insightful to hear everyone's perspective on it. And I am keen to read the book. I don't know where to get hold of it, as I'm sitting down in the global south, and the population down here are rather scarce and few and far between. But I will
You
be
have the
in
free PDF. Go back to the email, and there's a download button for or in the text. You can
Okay.
you can download the PDF, and then you can at least read that one.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I mean, just in conclusion, I think it's a complex area, but it's also actually a very simple area. And maybe
Exactly.
sometimes we overcomplicate things when in fact we just should keep it simple, stupid. I'll make that a plural. That's me. Thanks.
I think simple isn't stupid, but besides that, you've summarized the book very perfectly without even having read it, because I think that's the art of the book. And the art of the book is actually very beautiful as well. You see the title, and you see within there are the designs of Zurich, and it's really it's a gem. Fiona, please.
Yeah, I tried to send a note about an article that has another look at Isabel Mend's Lythe's study of social systems as a defense against anxiety. And it's a study of why nursing staff kept leaving a London hospital. And what she discovered was that the whole hierarchy was designed as a defense against anxiety. And I think that idea is very, very important. And I tried to put it in a note and it went awry. But the main thing I want to say is that I think what I'm realizing more and more is that our day-to-day experience of living as human beings in various configurations is immensely complex, but it's also dynamic. And we don't discover whichever bodily or organizational or civil system we are part of, we are all deeply interconnected and affected every moment by what everyone else is doing around us. I mean, I'm with you, Alan, on this. I mean, we're all deeply connected at every level, cells, bodies, whatever. And so I think any book that tries to actually open up the conversation is really wonderful, and I congratulate the authors. I thought it was so rich. And there's obviously more, and I just love the learning I got from it already. So, yeah, social systems, very complex.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And Alan got triggered by the word connected. I translated for your ears to related. I think that's what you meant. Angela, please.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm just really enjoying this conversation. I think what's come up with me is I'm really interested in I think a lot of things are, I do think even narcissists have the capacity to change, and I like to believe that. I just think if there's not a necessity or an accountability given our current existing systems, then I'm not sure. I think maybe things will be more grassroots, like people like us coming together and making change. I don't know. I'm just very curious about incentivications within systems and also neurodivergence. And because I think a lot of US corporate culture is neurotypical thought.
Thank you so much, Angela. And I think it's your first time here.
Yes, I'm really enjoying it. It's wonderful.
Welcome. Wonderful. Michael, please. Up to 2 minutes.
Yeah, I better set an alarm. I did read the book, guys. I thought it was great. I'm going to be quoting it in my book that I have coming out later. You brought up some things that I'm writing a book that's suggesting a system. And interestingly enough, there's things that in my book I just intuitively had come up with that, local, I didn't use the term local, but that regional areas or whatever will develop their own systems, that they will develop naturally without it having to be governments ordering everybody how to do every aspect. So there were definitely aspects of your book that I delved into and kind of went, yeah, I've already been thinking that way. I'd like to point out that some of the comments have been made about reductionistic thinking. All of those methods that are thinking are kind of, in my opinion, part of what John kind of mentioned. They all have their purpose and their place. So in a way, all of them should be part of the system of analyzing problems and trying to fix problems in systems. Because in my career in management, in low-level management, everything has always been come in and I've had to analyze what is the problem or problems in this department. The other thing I did that I noticed showed up in your book is I always tried to look for small changes that have big effects rather than trying to make big changes hoping they have big effects. So like the book I'm reading is about making one small fundamental change in how we look at things, expecting it to have a huge effect on how society operates. That kind of concept. So there were definitely lots of things in your book I found helpful. So just, am I under 2 minutes?
No, it's fine. Thank you so much. Ross, you already spoke. Colin, please.
So I've only actually read part of it, to be honest, but I think a lot of the thing that I took away from that is something, I see, I mentioned slightly earlier about a spiritual engineering thing that I'm currently working on as well. It's co-creating meaning, really, isn't it? And there's very much there's a song that I've been listening to a lot recently, and it says that hope is choosing to find meaning in a meaningless world, and I think ultimately that is what we're trying to do here with systems, is we're trying to make sense of the nonsensical. We're trying to create meaning for people, and we're trying to do all these things. So yeah, I think what I wanted to actually quickly ask John and Adam, has there been anything in this discussion that you feel like has maybe contributed or changed your perspectives on the book, or anything that you've discussed in the book? Has there been anything here that's maybe opened up a different avenue or anything along those lines?
Go ahead, Adam.
You want me to go, do you? Okay. If I'm honest, everything changes all the time. The book's not perfect, and I change stuff. As soon as it was written, it felt like I wanted to add more. I think somebody summed it up the other day when they said a book is never finished, it's just abandoned. And we got 4 years into this project and abandoned the book, I think would be a fair description of what went on there. Because it's yes, every conversation I have makes me think differently about all sorts of things. There are some things I heard and I thought, oh no. If I'm honest, the Incozy stuff leaves me a bit cold. I'm not a systems engineer. I don't believe in systems engineering. I just think it's like I think IT is the same problem as systems engineering. It's about things, and I really struggle with perceiving things.
I would disagree with you, but I
don't. We could debate this all day. I don't want to do that now, but
no, that's fine.
Because we have to shorten a bit because we're already over time, and I want to give everybody the opportunity to say something. John, anything important to this question?
Yeah, so I also disagree with Adam on that point. So I came through a very similar path. So my early work was in technical control theory and modeling humans in the loop, and mathematically, using all the analytic tools of control theory. And so analytic modeling is how I learned systems thinking. And the really great thing about the analytic models is you run your models and you get surprised. And I'm constantly being surprised. I mean, just the simple dynamics of a closed loop system and understanding stability and the variety of responses that you can get out of a simple closed loop circuit was just and how to describe that. And I discovered that simple causal logic just didn't work. All my intuitions based on stimulus response were wrong. And it was this, and so I think, and again, people have talked about reductionistic, holistic, but again, they've got to play off. And then the whole point is you've got to use you have to have a lot of tools in your toolbox in order to really reach an understanding of anything. And the problem is not analytic versus or reductionistic versus holistic. The problem is to take a narrow perspective on a complex problem. And when we talk about the biggest boundary on anything, is the boundaries come from the observer, not the phenomenon. So everything's connected. So boundaries are arbitrary. And when you define a boundary, that's saying more about you than it is about the phenomenon often. But we can learn from other systems thinking and stuff, and some boundary setting tends to be more productive, lead to more productive answers than other boundaries. And so that's what we learn from the mathematical models tell us a lot about our boundaries and apply that they're an additional way. So you can test your hypothesis both through observations in the natural world, But mathematics and applying technical and analytical models is also a good way to test your hypothesis. And to me, the value of analytic thinking was that most of my hypotheses turned out to be wrong when I exercised the mathematical models. And so, yeah, so, I think, we always get into us versus them kind of discussions. And just that whole idea of my way of thinking is right and their way of thinking is wrong is antithetical to me, to a systems perspective.
Excuse me. I think I just done reading a book that is dealing with systems theory, systems architecting, systems engineering, and systems thinking. And so I think we can benefit from understanding a little bit of all these. So if you are systems thinkers, then you take all these system approaches anyway.
Thank you, Said. Colin, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I came to this through I met with Adam a while ago, and I was intrigued to see what you come up with. I've started to read it, but still got a long way to go. And I found out today that I'm probably a natural systemic thinker rather than a systems thinker, which is because I've read almost nothing on systems thinking really. So it's been a fascinating conversation. But I really think that the value to be taken out of systems thinking is actually giving people ways of understanding and tools of applying it. Because we obviously need to get out of the linear thinking that is plaguing our systems at the moment. I saw a company. I did economics as a degree, which is an introduction to systems in a way, mostly a bad way of thinking about systems, I would say. But I think it's interesting entry point.
Thank you so much. John Evans.
Sorry, I was doing something else. Do you know I'm going to pass on this? I'm just fascinated to hear the kind of cloud of words that is around the idea that systems don't exist, the whole framework around it, and
Thank you so much. That's a great insight as well, to just be there and listening. Julia, do you want to add something?
I would love to, but my brain doesn't appear to be there today. Just that the combination of no, I probably don't. Sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, but the combination of.
Sorry, I'm not thinking very well today.
Gavin, please. Thank you, Julia.
Hi, everyone. I am impressed, for not to shake people, but I can say I have had multiple cranial orgasms in the last hour. I have not attended a thing that has, one, enforced my belief in understand what I understand about systems and how it's connected, two, the approach that other people see, and three is the one wonders, and with all the racial tensions that are going on in the world and class things, if you read anything, how people approach fixing problems could, by reading the book, allow people to think outside their own little cage that they are safe with. And second of all is, if they can, will they be willing to test their thinking or understanding to move that way? Because it gives so many solutions to so many things, so many problems and errors we have in society and on the globe. And thanks to everyone. Your comments have been insightful, to say the least. And the comments by the authors are mind-blowing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gavin. And I'm happy that you found the time zone and everything.
Yeah, still limited on funds, so I need to determine which one I use, and this one I would not risk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nicola, lovely to see you again.
Lovely to be here. So lots of thoughts like everyone, and the shortest form that I will say is that everything is related. And if we pay attention to the relation between any thought, any definition, any term, that then allows us to see like the inferences that we're making from our social location onto another, and that then creates the system that we define. And so if we can remember that whatever we're defining as a system comes from us too, that will enable us to live well.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful. Onyx, I just ask you, would you like to add something? Okay. So then we're going back to Adam and John to give us an overview of their wonderful book, Do Systems Exist? A Conversation in Zurich. John, please.
So there's a couple things. So first, I think it's really important to acknowledge Fred Borhorst and his artwork. And, as in line with Alan's approach, one of the big boundaries is our language. And some things cannot be expressed in words and cannot be expressed in mathematics, but they still are important. And so that's why the art, I think, was a very important part. And, artists do also create models of the world, and poems are models of the world, and literature is a model of the world. And so, I think it's important to open your mind to multiple perspectives. But, you don't have to stand on the face of any perspective in order to argue for your perspective. And, if you look historically, the general systems thinkers were all very skilled at mathematical modeling and applying mathematical models and stuff. So they were very sophisticated and they're very good at applying those models. But the thing that differentiated them from others that made them general systems thinkers is they also had a deep appreciation for the limitations of their mathematics and their models. And I think that's, and that's where the humility comes in, is trying to is to be aware that you do have limitations and that other people have a lot to offer in terms of understanding the world, that they can that other people can see things that you can't possibly see. And that's again, for me, I went through a phase, and I think everybody does when they're young, when they think they have the answers. And for me, spent most of my career trying to teach control theory to social scientists and saying, here's the answer. It's all closed loop. And if you understand the dynamics of closed loop systems, and we even wrote a book that's all mathematics in terms of trying to introduce the mathematics of control theory to social scientists. If you want, everyone takes a look at it, it's called Control Theory for Humans. But it's mathematical, and that's the way I came to control theory. And I had the illusion that if people want to understand systems, they had to take the same path I took. And so I spent years trying to teach graduate students control theory because I thought that's where I discovered systems thinking, and I thought that was the path they had to take. Part of this book is my realizing, first of all, that most of the world is not going to take that path. And so if control theory is a prerequisite for systems thinking, then nobody's going to get there. But so a lot of people learn control theory from their experience in life. And I found, people who, and, there's a lot of gray hairs in this thing. And so part of, I think the older you get, the more humble you get, and the more open you get, and the more appreciation you have of how, the more times you've been wrong, the better you appreciate the real complexity of the world. So, yeah, but I think it's really important to realize that there are boundaries, and that each of us are bounded by our own experience. And again, my experiences of people who've actually struggled with real world, to try to build things, to do complex things in the world, and have made lots of mistakes. They're open to systems thinking. I think particularly people involved in athletics and coaching, because if you're in competitive sports, then you've failed many times, no matter how good you are. Before you get to the highest level, you've failed a lot, and you appreciate the complexity of the world. So I've come to the conclusion that people can get here without going through the analytical models. And part of my motivation writing this book is to reach those people who are not going to go into the mathematics, who are not going to go deeply into the academics, who's not going to go back and read all the historical work, but who still are wrestling with complex problems. And I have so I'm at least narcissistic enough to believe that some of my experiences could be useful to other people. And so that's why you write a book. I mean, you have to be a little bit of a narcissist to write a book to begin with, to actually think that you have something to say, that it's worth people's time to reading. My most surprising feedback is from the very early comment that the book was too short and too concise. And they wanted us to shorten it up and write a synopsis. I thought this was the synopsis for me. And for me, books are not read, that they're reread. And my aspiration for this book is a book that people will read over and over again, because what I find is the books that are most valuable to me, every time I pick that book up, depending upon the context of my life and my experiences, I discover something new in this book. And, I hope that this book functions more like a Rorschach, in the sense that people will see their own experiences in this book and will look into their own experiences in a deeper way. And that every time that somebody will pick this book up at different phases of their life, and each time be surprised that there's something in this book that they didn't see the last time because it was a different context that they read it in. Over. Thanks. And thank you, everybody, for your comments and feedback.
That is wonderful. When I just finished the book, I thought I need to read it again and take a marker and kind of mark the stuff that I can memorize it better. And of course, there's nothing more narcissistic than to say, read my book over and over again, John, to pull your leg a little bit. But this is not the kind of my opinion on you, but just because you brought the topic up. Adam, please.
So the as John said, the problem is language. And most of the principles in the book are written in a language that, as Roger pointed out to me the other day, was written in the 1970s, and you need a kind of a manual of language that they used in the 1970s to even understand this stuff. It's almost impenetrable in many cases. I mean, people like Stafford Beer would just wrote this incredible complex way of writing stuff. And I didn't understand a word when Jeff Elliott explained system thinking to me. I spent 3 months sat in his hotel room. The only thing I got out of it was, I don't know anything. And what that taught me was, I need to go away and I need to learn some stuff. And the more I studied it and got my head around it, the more I realized it's actually really simple. It's just the way I think. And they use really complicated words to describe how I think. And what I tried to do was to go, look, a lot of people, the most common feedback I've had is people have read this book and gone, oh, that's how I think. Now I have the words to explain it. And that's really the biggest compliment the book could have, is that most people probably think this way, and they've been taught not to think this way. And that's kind of what's really wrong, is that they've been taught to think in this other weird way that that everything has a root cause and everything is cause and effect and everything is deterministic and everything has to be defined, none of which is true. You could just describe it. And the stories that I tell in the book are illustrations like Fred's illustrations. It's just another way of perceiving that thing in a kind of a narrative that is hopefully easy to get your head around and go, oh yeah, I see, right, that makes sense. I think the problem is it's like a magic trick. It looks magic until somebody explains it, and then you go, oh, and it's not magic anymore. It's actually really simple. And all of the stuff in the book is really simple. It's not complicated. And I know it's dense because it has a lot in it, but actually there's 10 lessons in the book, one of which is people do what the hell they want. You can think that they do what you tell them to, but they don't. They don't really. And really the underlying principle, I think, and other people will disagree and they'll have their own, but I think the underlying principle is requisite variety. The law of requisite variety is the law of gravity. If you don't have the requisite variety to absorb the variety coming out, you're not viable. You're dead. And what business spent all its time doing is reducing the requisite variety of its people, of its systems, of its interactions to the point that they just don't work anymore. Go to England, nothing works. Why? Well, they've destroyed the requisite variety of everything under the guise of control. And actually, the opposite is cheaper, faster, more effective, makes everybody happy, stops burnout, all that thing. All these people are burning out because they have no requisite variety to deal with the variety coming at them. Anybody ever gone to an AI chatbot to get help? Has anyone ever got help from one of those things? Because I haven't. I've only ever ended up in a doom loop of frustration and annoyance where I just end up hating everything. If that's the objective, who wins? So really, this book is from my perspective, is just an attempt to go, life's actually really simple. We overcomplicate it by just trying to do things the wrong way. Just think about it in a much more open way. Somebody once said, every time I pick anything up, I'm surprised that it's connected to everything else. And that's pretty much it, right? We're all connected. Everybody's connected. Everything is connected. As Alan said, natural inclusion.
Alan would say related and not connected. He would
related. I'll go with related then, just so everyone doesn't shout at me. But yeah.
So yeah, and as John also said and Adam also said, the pictures are like the soul of this book, and I would recommend you to buy the hard copy. Nobody makes any money of it but Amazon. You can see how much money Amazon makes, but this is a book that you want to have in your library and read again. So it's very beautiful. And I'm happy that this is really where I'm also going for walks and in my happy places. I thank you all for joining today, and yeah, I will release the recording and hope you will comment and add further thoughts on the video. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.